Hi, I'm Laura,
And I'm Joe.
and this is CrimeDivers.
Hello everyone, welcome to today's episode.
Hello everyone, welcome back.
Thanks for joining us once again.
So Joe, where in the world are we today?
We're in the USA today.
Okay, and what's your title?
Housemate from Hell.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, it's obviously
It's exactly what it sounds like.
Totally. Okay, shall we dive in?
Let's dive in. So we were in 2010 and Drew Pyatt was 51 years old. He lived in Stockton, California, which is one of the biggest cities to claim bankruptcy. Just a wee bit of trivia for you.
Right, okay.
It's got a lot of social, economic problems with gangs and drug use and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And Stockton is in the county of San Joaquin, I think, which is the second most violent per capita county in the state of California. So,
Oh, don't fancy living here then.
so the house that Drew lived in was owned by his mother. She was a real estate agent, and he rented it from her, and he worked as a landscaper. So there was a family friend, Valerie Nessler. She was 25 and she needed somewhere to live. So Drew invited her to stay in his house. He had the room and he knew that she didn't have any money to pay rent, so he let her live there for free. One of Valerie's best friend, who we'll sort of get to later, she described Valerie as a handful, but she was very loving and very kind. Drew's mum was quite happy for Valerie to stay. As I said, she was a family friend, so but she didn't want anyone else moving in. She's like, right, that's fine, but nobody else.
Mm-hmm.
So luckily for Drew and Valerie, the house that they lived in on Sussex Way in North Stockton was in a nice part of town. It was a middle class neighbourhood, and you would feel fairly comfortable like walking down the street, even at night time. So it was quite a nice area. The house had 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms, a two car garage, and like nice front and back gardens. So it sounds like quite a nice place to live. But it soon became a refuge for one more person, 48-year-old Jeffrey Wheatley. He had split up with his girlfriend and had been living in hotel rooms for months. So Drew, who was an acquaintance of his, offered him the spare room in his house against his mum's wishes. Because there was a spare bedroom. There was 3 bedrooms.
Just be like a good Samaritan, wasn't he?
Yeah. So Jeff was in Stockton looking for a new start. Born in 1961, he was brought up in San Jose, California. He was described by his sister Wendy as a wild child and a rascal. I love that word, rascal.
Rascal, yeah.
Did I not call you a rascal? I called you a rascal the other day when your daughter was talking about being in the brownies and you said you were an imp.
Oh yes, that's
And
right.
she was like, what's an imp? And I said, oh, an imp's a rascal.
Yes, that is a good word.
Your mummy's a rascal. He failed to graduate from high school and decided to join the US Coast Guard, where he was introduced to opioids after a bad knee injury. He had fallen on deck and he was sent to Seattle to get surgery. He went back to the Coast Guard and was in a helicopter accident, and it re-injured his knee. Because it was already in bad shape, so he ended up having to leave the Coast Guard because of his injury. And he became addicted to the pain pills. So when the doctor stopped prescribing them, he resorted to using street drugs. So he battled with addiction, and there were times when he was clean, but unfortunately, it was sort of back and forth with it. You can say it properly there. So when he stopped working for the Coast Guard, he ran a restaurant in Georgia. He worked as a trucker, and he studied to be a nurse. So he was kind of a bit all over the place, really kind of looking, just
trying to find something.
Yeah, just looking for the right thing.
Career move,
So he qualified to be a nurse, but he didn't stay a nurse for long because, according to a documentary that I watched called Stranger in My Home, in the Deep South, if you're not a woman and you're a nurse, then there's a real question of your sexuality, which is absolutely ridiculous.
Well, it is, because there's nothing wrong with male nurses, is there?
Yeah, of course. And this really bothered him and he ended up quitting.
Right, okay.
So an ex-girlfriend of his said that he was 6'4" or 5" and big built, and he had this aura about him. And when he spoke, she knew he was like not the big tough guy that he kind of looked like. He was very soft spoken and very gentle. He was very kind, and he had kind, beautiful brown eyes. She said that they used to feed the homeless people all the time, like that was a high priority to Jeff. Like they would give him food and money, and then like if they were in a restaurant and they saw like a homeless person maybe having a cup of coffee, then Jeff would say to the waiting staff, just get that person whatever they want and just put it on my bill.
Oh, right.
I mean, how nice is
Yeah,
that?
I know, it sounds like a nice guy.
I know. So he loved people and he cared about people. He was a big guy and he looked intimidating, but he was a teddy bear.
Big softy.
Yeah. He married 3 times, but unfortunately none of the marriages worked out. So when Jeff moved in with Drew and Valerie in January 2010, they all got on really well. Jeff and Valerie especially hit it off. They developed a really close friendship, and like he would even like give her manicures, like paint her toenails and things like that. So he also was a big soft guy.
Yeah, totally.
And one day he found a puppy wandering the streets, so he brought it in for her, and like they looked after, they give it a wash, and like they ended up looking after it together. So according to her friend, Valerie's friend, Valerie could make any guy fall for her, and apparently that's what happened. Both Jeff and Drew liked her a lot, even though Drew had a girlfriend, and was a lot older. I mean, Drew was like 51.
Yeah,
so,
yeah, it was a lot older, yeah.
Not that that's a big deal,
No,
but
of course not.
it was thought that part of Valerie's charm was that she hadn't had the easiest life, and a lot of men like to help a damsel in distress. So maybe that's what attracted both Jeff and Drew.
Maybe.
Valerie was originally from a really rough neighbourhood. She grew up in the east side of Stockton. When she was 20, she was living with her dad, and he actually killed himself. She found him when he killed himself. And like he had been her everything. She'd been a right proper daddy's girl, and she was obviously devastated when he died. After he died, she bounced around, sort of staying with other family members, because for whatever reason her mum mustn't have had room, or her mum was unable to take her in.
Right.
After leaving school, she had wanted to become a judge, and she had a job at the courthouse doing office work. But a year after her dad died, tragedy struck again. She had a daughter, Chloe, and she had like brought the happiness back to her when her dad had passed, but unfortunately she lost Chloe to sudden infant death syndrome.
Oh, that's heartbreaking.
I know, absolutely awful. And after that, her friend said Valerie was just gone. She was there, but she just wasn't really existing. It's not surprising in the slightest after
Totally
losing her
not.
dad and her baby.
Well, exactly. I mean,
Heartbreaking.
totally.
She said there were so many times when she just had to hold Valerie while she was on the ground screaming that she just wanted to die. She had lost her dad and her daughter, and she'd actually been told that she was unable to have any more children as well. So the one that she could have, she lost her. So after losing Chloe, Valerie started using drugs, and she was still using when she moved into Drew's house. But according to court documents, drug use was rampant there anyway, and Jeff allegedly sold methamphetamine from the house. So as I said before, the 3 housemates had been getting along great, but after a while it started to become clear that there were three very different people. Like Drew, he kept the house nice and tidy. Jeff's room was immaculate. But Valerie was the complete opposite. Her room was an absolute tip, and I'm sure they were probably cleaning up after her in the other rooms of the house, and I'm sure that would be really annoying.
Yes, totally.
Yes, I've lived with a grown-up child and a husband. Yes, it's annoying when they're messing your house up and you're tidying up at the back.
I am sick to death of tidying my daughter's room. I've said to her now that you need to start taking a bit of responsibility for your room. You know, she's just turned 7 now, so I'm like, come on, you can at least do a little bit of tidying out to help me out here. I'm not expecting it to be like immaculate, but like just picking stuff up and
she needs to learn.
Exactly.
So Jeff spent a lot of time repairing an old truck that his dad had bought for him. His goal was to find employment once he had a vehicle to drive. So that's why he was spending so much time. He needed a job, and he was like, right, this is my goal. Get the truck fixed, then I can find myself a job. So Valerie, however, she just wanted to party. She always had friends in and out of the house, and like they all just used it as a party place. And and as I said before, Drew and Jeff, they liked a nice, clean, tidy house, so you can imagine what it's going to be like if she's having people in and out all the time, having parties. So it must have been a right mess.
Oh, totally.
Robert Turner was an old friend of Valerie's, and he was at the house a lot. They had known each other for years, and he also had a tragic story in his past. His dad had died when he was 5, and he later lost his brother, William Phillips, who was nicknamed Moose. So we just call him Moose from now on.
Okay.
So in 1994, Moose was found dead in his room, from a gunshot to the head.
Mm-hmm.
So it actually went up like through the bottom of his chin up to the top of his head.
Right.
It was ruled as an accidental self-discharged death. In other words, it wasn't suicide, but he was messing around with a gun and he shot himself.
Right, okay.
I don't know how they can determine that though. If he was in the room by himself, how can they determine whether it's suicide or whether it was an accident?
Must be like maybe the positioning of it, or I don't know.
I don't know, but
I'm no expert.
no, of course.
So who knows?
But it does make you wonder.
I'm sure
though.
there obviously is a way, clearly, otherwise they wouldn't say it, would they? But yeah, I mean it.
But Robert and his family were convinced that he was murdered.
Right.
They always believed it was some like outlaw motorcycle gang, like a Hell's Angels type hit, because of something to do with drugs. As Robert was at the house so often partying with Valerie, he obviously met her housemates, Drew and Jeff. But Jeff wasn't too happy about how much time Robert and Valerie were spending together because he had a bit of a crush. But Robert already had a girlfriend. He was dating Valerie's friend Amber. This is the friend that I've been talking about, like that's been saying things about Valerie.
Yeah.
That's our friend, our best friend Amber.
Right.
Amber said that Robert was very family orientated when it came to her and her kids. He loved to joke around, and if you were having a bad day, he would always make you laugh. She also said that he fixed her. He took her out of a really abusive relationship and showed her that real men don't hit women. He was respectful, lovable, and they'd been dating for a few months. She knew that he'd been spending a lot of time with Valerie, but she also knew that they were old friends, so it didn't bother her. She trusted both of them. So late one night, about 2 months after Valerie moved into Drew's house, she called Amber in the middle of the night. She was crying and she told her that she had been attacked. She told Amber that she had been asleep and she had woke up feeling someone touching her. Her knickers were at her ankles and her top had been pulled up. And she said it was Jeff. And then he had went on to rape her.
Okay.
So even though Amber was Valerie's best friend, she wasn't actually sure whether to believe her. As she said, Valerie liked to cause drama between people and she would lie to get attention. So it must have been quite bad for her to not believe her when she said that she's been attacked, she's been raped. So Valerie was like, because Amber was kind of like, not so sure about this. She was like, oh, let me speak to Robert then. So but Robert was just the same as what Amber was, and he didn't leap to her rescue, like she expected him to come and
sort of believe her and just, try and help her through it or whatever.
Yeah, but like he just said he was used to her antics by now, they just didn't believe him. So he just says, oh, I'll see you tomorrow.
Right, okay.
So obviously neither of them believed her. So then Valerie was like, right, okay then. So she phoned her ex, who had been Chloe, her daughter Chloe, that her dad.
Right.
He got upset, but then Valerie told him she wasn't completely sure what happened. So that was all very strange. And after that, daily life in the house appeared to carry on as normal. So I'm not quite sure, like nobody seemed to confront Jeff about it. And they mustn't have believed Valerie, because if they'd believed Valerie, then somebody would have confronted him.
Yeah.
And she obviously never went to the police or anything like that. So it just didn't really go anywhere. So, which, I mean, and it leads me to believe that he probably didn't, because if you'd been attacked by somebody, you wouldn't still live in the same house with them and carry on as normal.
Well, yeah, you'd think that would be a bit impossible, but
I don't see how you could. You'd be absolutely terrified. And if it had actually really happened, surely like Amber and Robert would let her go and stay there until...
Well, yeah, exactly.
Until she can get herself sorted. So
she wasn't really pushing to... I mean, alright, if they didn't believe her at first and weren't overly concerned, but she was like adamant, no, this happened, I don't want to stay here or whatever, then...
but she just kind of left it.
Yeah, just carried on.
Yeah, everybody deals with things differently, of course, but
of course.
It just seems a bit strange. One night, Valerie and Jeff were alone in the living room. So again, like, would you be alone with somebody who's attacked you?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's where it doesn't quite add up.
Yeah.
She would be fearful.
Our opinion only.
Yeah, of course, but you would think she would be fearful of it maybe happening again.
Of course.
If it's happened already.
So one night they were alone in the living room, and Jeff told her that he killed a guy once. They were just having a conversation, and obviously that just came up.
It just crops up in conversation right enough.
Yeah. She said that he was bragging that he shot the man in the head and that he had been part of a gang. So
Okay.
So meanwhile, Drew was starting to get pissed off. He had been told that Jeff had been selling meth from the house. So he told Jeff that he had to stop or he would throw him out. And he was intending on throwing Jeff out. I think that was kind of where it was going. I don't think he hadn't got around to actually doing it yet, but I think that was kind of, no, you're not selling drugs from my house. You know, it's my mum's house and that's just not happening.
Yeah.
But before he could, he got a phone call. So this call was from someone telling him to get out of the house because bad things were coming.
Okay.
So that night he went out with his girlfriend and he came home in the early hours of the 7th of April 2010 and he saw the house was on fire. So he ran to a shop down the street and called 911. The fire service arrived shortly after and got the fire under control. So when they got into the fire service got into the house, they realised there was a body lying on the floor. So they called the police, and when investigators arrived and entered the house, they found a bag near the front door, not far from the body, and in that bag was a sawn-off shotgun with 2 expended 12-gauge shotgun shells, 2 kitchen knives that had blood on them, and some men's clothing and a pair of latex gloves.
Mm.
So the police were able to identify the body by fingerprints and tattoos, and it was Jeff Wheatley.
Right.
So the deputy district attorney said that Jeff's body was traumatised. Approximately a third of his body was burned away, and his family just got the call that no one ever wants. Just hours later.
Mm-hmm.
So investigators discovered that not only had Jeff been burned alive, he had also been shot twice and stabbed 32 times.
Jesus.
There was a lot of blood on his head and shoulders from shotgun wounds, and he had numerous stab wounds throughout his torso, and there was blood literally everywhere. Like, there was like pools of blood, there was footprints in blood, there were handprints in blood, there was smears of blood all over doors and cupboards, there was just blood everywhere. And it was just a really brutal attack. And officers actually described it as overkill. One officer said, a quote, "By the sheer brutality of it, this was a vengeance killing. This is someone who was highly motivated, who was personal. This was not some random shooting where you shoot a guy one time. This was something very personal." End quote. Now, I'm sure you're probably thinking that you know why he was killed, but I'll tell you now, you're completely wrong.
Okay.
Sorry, we shouldn't be laughing, but because
I
I know you're thinking that she's probably killed him or got somebody to kill him because of the rape. No.
No, it's not that.
No.
Okay.
So I just thought I'd spoil it for you there.
Thanks. And the rest of the listeners.
Well, no, I'm just telling you because everybody's thinking it's leaning in that direction and it's actually not. So
Well, you could just let us go in that direction and then surprise us at the end.
the police started piecing together the evidence. First they interviewed Drew. Police said at first he was a little evasive and things didn't look too good for him. There was gasoline found all over the house as well as an empty gas can, and that gas can was from his garage because it was what he used to fill his lawnmower equipment with because he was a landscaper.
Yeah.
But he said he didn't know anything about the murder. He hadn't known there was a body inside the house. He had just called...
Well, surely he wouldn't want to burn down his mum's house, would he?
Well, you wouldn't think so. But who knows?
This is true.
So, yeah, he said he didn't know anything about it. He had just basically came home and ran down the street and phoned for the fire. You know, like the house was on fire. That's all he knew. But he didn't tell the police about the warning call that he'd got.
Okay.
But his girlfriend did because he'd also told his girlfriend. So once they knew about that, they were like, come on, you need to talk. So he opened up a bit more. He told them that he was in fear of his life and he was worried that if he told the police about the call, he might get hurt. So that's why he hadn't told them. When asked who warned him, he said it was Valerie. She had said that someone was angry with Jeff and they were coming for him. But Valerie was nowhere to be seen, so police were worried that she was also dead. Like, did she ever kill Jeff? Like, go after her as well. So they started looking for her and they tracked her down later that day at her mother's house, alive and well. So they took her in for questioning, but they didn't tell her they didn't tell her that there had been a murder, or that they knew that she had called Drew to warn him. They just, obviously said about the fire. They were inquiring about the fire. So they started asking questions about Jeff, just like what he was like and all that kind of stuff. So she told them that it was just a roommate and they didn't talk very much. And she was pretty sure that Jeffrey Wheatley wasn't his real name.
Okay.
She told him that his name was Joe Wheeler and he had done something really terrible. To prove that Joe Wheeler wasn't a good guy, she told him that he had sexually assaulted her.
Mm-hmm.
She told the officers that she had been using drugs and drinking alcohol one night, and she woke up to Joe. I'm just going to say Jeff because...
Yeah, we know his name is Jeff.
His name is Jeff.
Uh-huh.
It's not Joe.
Right.
That's just her saying that.
Okay.
So she woke up to Jeff touching her. But then she later changed her story and said it was one of Jeff's friends who did it, and Jeff failed to protect her.
That's what makes you doubt the story now when you change it, because the truth is the truth at the end of the day, and if you change your story, then why?
Yeah, don't change your story.
No.
So then they asked her if she knew anything about what happened in the house the night before. She said, yeah, there was a fire. That's what Mom told me. And the police told her that they were conducting a murder investigation, and she was like, what? Are you serious? Like, who's been murdered?
Mm-hmm.
They told her that they had brought her in because they knew that she had told Drew to stay away from the house.
Yeah, it's just like she knew something bad was coming, obviously.
So Drew had actually told Jeff that someone was coming for him, so he had warned him,
Right.
and that he better get out of the house, because I was kind of wondering about that to start off with. I was like, did he not think?
Aye.
But he did.
Mm-hmm.
And according to Drew, Jeff wasn't bothered about it. He was just like, oh, it's fine, everything will be okay. Like, he just obviously didn't take it seriously.
Yeah, clearly.
And he stayed at the house. After being confronted about the phone call, Valerie started to talk. So she said she was at home in her room, and there was a knock at the door. She was on her way to answer it, but then two men came bursting in the door and like just pushed past her, and she panicked and ran out the house.
Okay.
But the officers were like, you know, it was like, you probably know a bit more than that.
Yeah.
And they thought they thought like she must know their true identity because she knew someone was coming for Jeff. So how does she know that someone was coming?
Well, yeah.
So
who was it?
Yeah.
She must know or have
So
an idea.
they kept pushing her for names, and eventually she said Alan Perriman, who's known as AJ. AJ was an acquaintance of Valerie's and her best friend Amber, and had met him. I said that wrong. AJ was an acquaintance of Valerie's, and her best friend Amber had met him a few times. So Amber had said that on the occasion she had met him, he seemed like a nice guy. He was pleasant, respectful, and he was really good with her kids. The officers kept pressing Valerie for the other man's name, and she said she thought the man's name was Nico, and he was just some guy from the neighbourhood, just some acquaintance.
Oh, okay.
So after about 2 or 3 hours of questioning, the police let her go. After she left, officers sat down for a chat to kind of, go over it. And they're like, oh, nah, this is obviously a vengeance killing. And these kind of people who, they wouldn't leave a witness. So why is Valerie still alive?
Yeah, she think if that was the case, then she may be dead as well.
So they arrested AJ early in the morning of the 13th of April 2010. He said he had nothing to do with the murder and he had an alibi from the police themselves.
Oh.
And he says, check it out. Like, an officer pulled over my car. He tried to move without making a noise. Yeah. The chair squeaks usually, so well done.
I thought you just made it obvious to everyone.
We're not professionals. I think everybody knows that.
Yeah, it's true.
So he said that an officer pulled over his car because he was driving suspiciously, and when he stopped and got out, the front, I'm not doing very well, am I? No. He stopped and got out. So AJ stopped and got out when the police stopped him. And the person who was in the front passenger, got out and legged him.
All right.
Sorry, I just bashed the laptop off the thing. So the officer searched the car and found a methamphetamine pipe underneath the seat. But what was strange though was when the officer searched the car, it had normal, just like the normal carpets that you have on the floor of the car, right?
Uh-huh.
But when police arrested them about the murder, the carpets weren't there. So it's like, that's a bit strange. Why? Where's your carpets?
Yes, where have they gone?
So when being questioned, at one point AJ kind of broke down a little bit. He was showing concern for his family, and he told officers that if he did tell them the truth, he would be facing 25 to life. So, of course, the police are like, well, you've got to tell us now. Because you...
Oh, yeah, exactly. You can't just leave us hanging like that.
You've just told us that you've done something really wrong, that, that you're going to be facing 25 to life. So
exactly.
You have to tell us, but he refused to say anything else. And when they asked him about Nico, AJ said that he didn't know anyone of that name.
Mm-hmm.
So, obviously it wasn't Nico.
No, that wasn't his name. Whoever it is, if it is somebody.
So, AJ was kept in custody, and later the same day the police interviewed Valerie again. And this time she admitted that she didn't run out of the house when the two men had barged in after all.
Shit, Sherlock.
She said that she stayed there because the men said if she didn't, then they would kill her. And she said that she said that she saw what they did to Jeff.
Mm-hmm.
And then she dropped a bombshell. It wasn't Nico who killed Jeff.
Right.
It was someone both her and Jeff knew. Are you got any guesses?
True.
Nope.
Amber?
Nope. One more guess, go on. You can't remember anybody's name, can you?
I can't.
It was Amber's boyfriend, Robert Turner.
Oh, Robert,
Yes.
of course.
So a couple of weeks before, Valerie had told Robert that Jeff told her that he had murdered somebody. Remember, I told you that earlier on.
Yeah.
Now, remember, Robert and his family thought that someone had killed his brother, Moose.
Uh-huh.
Well, when Jeff told her that he had killed someone, she put 2 and 2 together and came up with 5.
Oh, so she was thinking
So, yeah, Jeff said that he had killed someone in 1994, and that was the year that Moose had died.
Oh, so then Robert thought that was...
Well, she told Robert that Jeff had killed his brother in the hopes that there would be some like drama surrounding her and she'd be the focus of whatever happened the next few days. She wanted to be the centre of attention all the time. So by doing that, then she was going to be in that. It's just ridiculous. Anyway, so Robert, he had went to Jeff and said, right, I want to talk to you. So he went into his room and they went in like for about half an hour. But when they came out, they were fine. They were smiling and laughing and everything was good. Like Jeff had presumably told Robert that he didn't kill his brother, and they sorted it out. But the morning after the murder, Robert's girlfriend Valerie's best friend Amber,
I know that.
well, I wasn't sure if you'd remember who Amber was. So Amber said that Robert had been out the night before, and when he came home he seemed different and he had duct tape wrapped around his finger.
Okay.
Amber overheard him on the phone to his other brother saying, it's been taken care of and that Moose can rest in peace now. So she also knew that Robert had a thing about fires.
Okay.
He loved fire and he would set stuff on fire all the time.
Right.
I think I'd be a bit scared if my boyfriend was like that.
Yeah, I would be a little scared, I think.
So, so she put 2 and 2 together, but she didn't come up with 5. She actually did come up with 4.
Yes.
So, and although Robert had played the family man with Amber, he had a history of arson. He had previously burned down a trailer to avenge another brother, Bruce. Basically, the owner of that trailer owed Bruce money, but he wasn't able to pay the money back, so Robert set the trailer on fire.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah. No, I would have been like, Bruce, sort it out yourself.
Okay, I know.
So, police started looking for Robert, and on the 17th of April, 11 days after the murder, he finally turned himself in. 2 months later, even with 2 suspects in custody, the police were still trying to figure out how Valerie fitted into the story, because they're like, she's
definitely involved.
Yeah.
She's definitely involved.
She was either a witness or a suspect.
Didn't know which, though.
Yeah, but they just didn't seem to see how she could be a witness and still be alive. So they're like, we're leaning the other way.
Yes, totally.
Suspect. So she must have done something to gain their trust. I don't know what I mean by that. She must have done something to gain their trust, and once the forensic results came in, things became much clearer. I have no idea what I meant by that.
She must have done something to gain the police's trust, that she was innocent, and then once the forensics came in, maybe that incriminated her.
I don't know. We'll just miss that
We'll
bit
say
out.
that's what you meant.
There was a drop of blood on one of the fingers of the latex gloves, and that blood was Jeff's. But the person who had been wearing the gloves was Valerie, because obviously her DNA would have been inside it. So she had been wearing gloves with Jeff's blood on it. So she was taken back in for questioning on the 23rd of June, and her story changed again. Surprise, surprise. This time she said, Robert made me do it. So she confessed that she stabbed Jeff, but she claimed that she didn't attack him aggressively.
How is stabbing not attacking aggressively?
Well, she must be saying that she just poked him gently with a knife. I don't know.
And I'm sure he'd have just allowed her to do that, right enough.
Well, yeah, it's ridiculous, isn't it? She's just one lie after the other.
Sounds like it.
One knife had a black handle and the other had a brown handle, and she admitted using the black handled one, and investigators could match up some of the wounds to that knife. And they were the more superficial wounds, but that's not surprising that her attacks wouldn't be as strong as whoever else, a man.
Yeah, because physically she probably wouldn't be as
she wouldn't be as
tough, as like powerful.
So that's not surprising. But she did stab him, there was no doubt about that. She did stab him. So she was arrested. So the trial for Alan Perriman, Robert Turner and Valerie Nessler began in July 2011. Valerie changed her story again and testified that she only acted like she stabbed Jeff, because she was scared that Robert would hurt her and her family. So, I don't know what she acted like she stabbed him, so was she just pretending that she would, to make it look like, but she did, because they had the evidence.
Yeah, that's just her.
So that doesn't make sense,
No, it doesn't make sense, no.
So, I mean, it was a bit hard to believe considering she kept changing her story, and especially after authorities discovered that Robert had passed her a note on their way into the trial. But someone saw the exchange, so Valerie didn't even get a chance to read it, but it was read in court.
Right, and what did it say?
Robert said that he loved her like a sister, and if she paid $5,000 into his prison account, he would take the blame.
Okay then.
What? $5,000?
Is that it?
So, and her whole defence was that she was terrified of Robert. But yeah, at the trial, they sat beside each other and they were laughing and touching each other and whispering to each other. And so I don't know how she expected anyone to believe that she was scared of him.
Well, exactly. Cause
if you're scared of somebody, then you would
not do that.
No, exactly. Yeah. I don't know what to say there, but yeah, you wouldn't do that, would you?
No.
So basically, what happened was, what had happened for the murder. So Valerie had sent text to Robert and AJ telling them where about in the house Jeff was, so that they would know when they came in where to go, which room to go to.
Yeah.
So they burst in, with Robert shooting Jeff twice with the shotgun. There was one shot in Jeff's face and one on his shoulder. Jeff was fighting back, and while this was happening, AJ was the guard, making sure no one came in. Valerie and AJ grabbed knives out the kitchen drawer and just started stabbing. Once they thought he was dead, they got up and walked away, but then they turned around and they saw that Jeff had actually got back up and was trying to get out the front door. And AJ ran up to him and tackled him down to the ground. So that's why when they walked in, he was next to the front door. That's where he'd been trying to escape, and then he'd got tackled back to the ground. Valerie at this point was more interested in her dog that was barking. She had picked it up and was panicking in case the men hurt the dog for making so much noise. Because obviously if the dog was barking, then it could alert people, like neighbours, or... So she was more bothered about protecting her dog than protecting a housemate.
Jeez.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I'd want to protect the dog as well.
Yeah, I get that, but yeah, still.
So one of the men went and grabbed the gas can and they doused Jeff with the gasoline and set him on fire while he was still alive. It was never officially determined who lit the fire, but once it started spreading, they all panicked and fled in AJ's car. When they were flagged down by the cops flagged them down, it was Robert who jumped out the passenger side and legged it. So at the trial, it was revealed that Robert wanted Jeff dead because he killed his brother Moose 15 years before. So obviously when he had that chat with Jeff, it hadn't all been worked out.
No.
Robert must have made out it was all cool and then started plotting to kill Jeff.
Yeah.
Amber, Valerie's best friend, she thinks that because Valerie didn't get the reaction that she had wanted when she claimed that Jeff attacked her, she took the one thing that she knew that would get to Robert, and that was her brother. So she wanted revenge.
So she used that to make him mad enough to do something.
So, yeah, which is, it still doesn't say. I mean, I get, she wanted Robert. That was her revenge on Robert, saying, "Well, you never came to my defence, so you're gonna basically end up in jail because you're gonna kill someone."
Yeah.
But what did Jeff do? Did Jeff actually attack her or not?
Oh yeah,
you know
exactly. We don't know.
No. So the thing is though, there's no way that Jeff could have killed Moose. Back in 1994, Jeff was stationed in Atlanta, Georgia, because remember he was in the Coast Guard.
Yeah, that's right.
So he was in Atlanta, Georgia at the time of Moose's death, so it just wasn't possible. And Jeff's sister she said that, like, Jeff always liked to tell stories, and he had tons of them, but he would have bragged about helping someone or saving someone, but he would never have bragged about hurting somebody.
No.
He was a big softie, as we said earlier, a big teddy bear,
So do you
with
think
a soft heart.
it was just all concocted by... I forgot her name already. Valerie, because she wanted...
we don't know. Jeff might have said that.
Robert clearly just took her word for it, maybe, if that's what she's done, and said about Moose, well, she did do that, tell Moose that he'd killed her brother, but he didn't do his research and making sure that was true, or trying to make sure that was true, and
he took her word for it.
Yeah, and saw red, and yeah.
But, like, and, you know, Jeff's sister said she would still have her brother if Valerie and Nestler hadn't started to play games. We don't know what Jeff said.
No.
Jeff might have said that he killed somebody, but people are saying it's not in his nature, so I don't know if she's made that up as well.
Well, that's it,
because it's coincidence. Was it coincidence that he said that he killed somebody in 1994, and that's when Moose died in 1994? You know.
Yeah.
So, and his ex-girlfriend as well said that he would never hurt anybody, and that she refused to believe that, as that just wasn't who he was. Everyone who knew Jeff said the same thing. No one would believe that he would hurt anybody. And there was no proof that Jeff was ever part of a criminal gang like apparently he said he was.
Yeah.
And there was actually no proof that he was dealing drugs either. Because remember, it was saying that he was dealing methamphetamine out of the house. There was no proof of that.
No proof of that, yeah.
And there was as I said, there was no proof that he ever assaulted Valerie either. So as our best friend said, Valerie liked to be the centre of attention. She had to be everyone's number one. And she could be your best friend or your worst enemy. So Robert Turner and Valerie Nestler were found guilty of first-degree murder in July 2011. Valerie was sentenced to 26 years to life in prison, and Robert was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. A few months later, Alan Perriman was found guilty of second-degree murder and was sentenced to 16 years to life. So they all got what they deserved anyway.
Definitely did.
So there you go. So yeah, that was, I don't know, a revenge killing that there was nothing to be
Revenge for.
Yeah, exactly. So it was a bit, like all murders are unnecessary, but that one just seemed so much just because of one woman's games.
Exactly, and then it ended up with a man losing his life in a quite brutal way. Yeah.
So thank you to everybody for listening. If you would like to follow us on social media, on Instagram and Twitter, we are crime_divers_pod. Our email is crime_divers_pod@outlook.com. Our YouTube is Crime Divers, all one word, podcast. TikTok, Crime Divers Podcast, all one word. If you'd like to buy us a coffee, or as we say, a cup of tea, you can go to buymeacoffee.com, and you can just a wee donation really. Or if you would like to join our Patreon, it's patreon.com/CrimeDivers, and you can get ad-free episodes, you can get early access episodes, bonus episodes, so that's, just come over and have a look.
Yep, and if you haven't already, please don't forget to subscribe, rate and review.
Thanks for listening.
Bye.